From Guantanamo Bay to Social Security to national security, Thomas Dixon and Dimitri, who are running for both the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, speak exclusively to me for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And let me stay on property, because if you were elected to the Senate and obviously the House of Representatives, what would you do about poverty in South Carolina?
I'll go.
Okay. Okay.
First off, folks need to understand the way that we work, okay? No longer will these be separate entities where you have the Senate and the Congress and the federal level up in Washington disappearing from the state. We're all working together, and along with supporting our state and local legislators, even down to the county levels, if they have the issues that are near and dear to us, okay? One of the issues near and dear to us would be poverty. Now, Dimitri had already alluded to part of the solution, a major portion of the solution, is increasing minimum wage in South Carolina. We increase, first off, we got to understand who does the spending. Who really spends money? Is it the wealthy or is it the poor? It's the poor. It's the people who receive minimum wages. Right now at $7.25, the minimum wage, they spend $7.25. At the end of the month, they have no savings left. They've spent it all. They're the ones who actually drive the economy, the little people, the people that makes the less money. So if we move to $15 an hour, and I say I'm not down with that incremental thing, because the cost of living is steadily going up. If we incrementally over 4 years get to $15 and the cost of living has gone up every one of those times, right, we'll still be in the same position 4 years from now. There's no difference. So we need that increase right now, so those people that do the most spending will have more to spend. The more they have to spend, the more they're going to spend. So now what you're doing is you're flooding our economy with money. So that money, that the economy is building from the bottom up, just as Dimitri said. Businesses are thriving. People are thriving. Now, we're smart enough, at least I think we are, to factor in small business, because we don't want to hurt small business. Nobody wants to hurt small business. So we need to make sure that mechanisms are in place for, so if a business is under an annual of, say, whatever, 250,000, let's just say that, or so many employees on that business, then they're not subject to this immediate minimum wage increase.
Some sort of sliding scale.
Exactly, because they're going to benefit too. When the community at large has more money, they're going into the small businesses and spending more money. They're going to see the benefits over time, whereas their annual revenue is going to increase. They'll be able to not only increase their minimum wage for their employees, but they'll also be able to expand their operation because there's more money being put into the system. How do we fix poverty? One step is to make sure that we have a living wage that fits 2016, 2017, and not be people trying to live off of a 2006 or 2001 minimum wage. That's one way.
So the other way is we need to bring dollars back from Wall Street. I mean, right now, when you look at the number of dollars in the world, 19.6 trillion debt-free dollars out here, and out of those 19.6 trillion, something like 2 trillion of them, just a fraction, are here among the 75% of us living paycheck to paycheck. We need to bring more of those dollars back from Wall Street, basically from the wealthy. And this is just what happens with the game of capitalism. If you play it long enough, all of the dollars at the bottom as little bits of profit. Maybe it's 1% profit, maybe it's 20% profit, maybe it's 40% profit. Eventually profit up to the top of the pyramid, to the people that are in the top, the business owners, the people who own capital. And we need to bring those dollars back. And there used to be a mechanism to do that. It was called the federal government. Mm-hmm. We had a 92% maximum tax rate. So when you earned above some amount, you were going to have 92% of that amount taken back by the federal government. And then the federal government would redistribute those funds however they wanted to in their government programs. Nobody wants to do that anymore for whatever reason. So now our maximum tax rate is, what, 38%? And that's why all of these dollars have trickled up to the top of the capitalist pyramid over the past 4 years. What we need to do is make it so that the people that have all those dollars, who right now are looking for the best possible investment they can find, and frankly, investments out there around the world are doing really bad. I mean, they're looking for something good, and there's nothing out there that's really giving them a great rate of return, which is why they're investing in treasury bills, which are returning something like 1% a year, and they still think that's nice and safe. So what we do is we create a thing we call the local community mutual fund. The local community mutual fund would be, for example, the Charleston area or maybe the Tri-County area here. We'd make it so that people that have investments in Wall Street right now, or mutual funds and other Wall Street investments, they're 401ks essentially, could invest some amount of their dollars in the local community mutual fund. And I've done a back of the napkin calculation, and we could probably easily have $3 billion to spend right here if enough people that have retirement accounts put half of their retirement accounts into the local community mutual fund. Then we would have $3 billion that we could hand out to entrepreneurs, businesses, people who are worthy of getting grants, so that basically all of those dollars would be reinvested locally here. And what I'd love to do is make it so that we train kids in high school and in college, so that when they get out of there, instead of them asking for or looking around for a job, what am I going to do for a job? What they're looking for is an opportunity where they could help their community. And that's what entrepreneurs do. You're looking for a hole, something that's missing that I can provide as an entrepreneur. I'd love to train every American kid so that they're always looking at that, so they know how to run a business. They know how to do financing, they know how to do marketing, they know how to go out and get money, they know how to write business plans. And then when they're out of high school, or maybe when they're still in high school, they write a business plan to the local community mutual fund. And then all of us that are members that have contributed into that evaluate those business plans every month and decide, yeah, we're going to give this kid $100,000 to go try this, whatever his business is. A year from now, chances are it's going to fail. But failure is part of the learning process. It's the best way to learn. And those $100,000 we gave to that kid, where'd they go? In the local community. They're still here in the local community, right? So it didn't hurt anything, it just helped us all. And then we go and maybe the next year he or she goes and submits a new business plan that improves on the previous one, and this time maybe it's successful. And our $100,000 investment suddenly, within a few years, blooms into $1 million opportunity for lots of people. We're creating new jobs, we're doing all sorts of things in the community. And that's the way we get money back from Wall Street into the local community as starting new businesses for things that are missing out here. So that's the other way we do it.
And quickly describe to me the following one word: the national debit.
Debt.
I should say
National debt? Yeah, so the national debt. You know, so many people are so concerned about that. And honestly, you know, 6 years ago I was concerned about it too, because we're trained our whole lives to think that the debt is a bad thing. And it is for us personally. I mean, debt got me in trouble, and you know, a lot of people are living right on the edge, and we build up as much debt as we can. But the national federal debt is nothing like personal debt for us. We actually have to borrow dollars to create a debt. The federal government creates dollars. So when they borrow dollars, they're not really borrowing dollars. What they're doing is they're creating a savings account for people that want to have a good savings account. I just said that, treasury bills.
Right.
What's the safest investment in the world right now? Treasury bills. They're only giving you a return of 1%. But if you've got $10,000 you want to put in a safe spot, you give it to the Treasury Department. You buy a T-bill, and then at the end of the year you get $10,000 plus 1% back. So what's that? $100 back, and that's your investment. That's all the debt is. It's just a savings account for these things. What the debt really is, it's a count of the dollars that are in the economy. So like I said, $19.6 trillion are what is out here right now. Those are debt-free dollars that nobody has to pay back to anybody. And those are the dollars we play with. I mean, all the dollars we have in our bank accounts. I'm guessing there isn't a whole lot of dollars between the three of us in our bank accounts, but whatever those dollars are, we should have. If you go through the numbers, if you go to Mark Sanford's website, with Sanford for Congress or whatever it is, he has right on there the debt calculator, and it shows on a second-by-second basis what the debt is. What that means is those are the number of dollars that are in the economy that are debt-free. And he also has inside of there, says that means everyone in the country owes this amount of money. We don't owe that amount of money. That's the amount of money we should have in our bank accounts. And right now it's about $61,000. There are 320 million people out there. The debt is $19.6 trillion. It comes out to be about $61,000 for each of us. Do you have your $61,000? I don't have mine. Do you have yours?
No, I'm still waiting on my 40 acres and a move.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's exactly right. So yeah, that's what it should be, and that is the sign of the inequality in America, that so few of us have maybe a few $100, maybe a few $1,000s to our name, and so many of us have millions to our name instead. And that's the inequality. It should be even. Everybody should have $61,000. I mean, no, nothing is actually even in life, but still, it should be more even than that. And you go back to the 1950s when the tax rate was 92%, and yeah, it was pretty even. I mean, there was a pretty even distribution of wealth across the entire population, but now it's not like that at all. So,
I think that when we look at the consistency of the Republicans and how they always go to those catchphrases about the national debt, it's amazing that you said you went to Sanford's site, and here he has the counter.
Yeah.
Right there. This is the issue. The debt is rising. And I'm not going to say that's not a serious issue. I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
But I think if we spend more time focusing on how we strengthen our economy, how we strengthen America, how we, instead of sending opportunity, jobs, and money overseas and start investing in our own nation and our own people, we would begin to, and not get sidetracked by this diversion. I don't think that he had that counter up during the Bush years. I'm just put that out there. But all of a sudden, in the Obama years, now you want to put up the counter. I think that we need to not allow them to distract us from what needs to be done. What needs to be done is we need to pump back into our own economy through bottom level, good quality building, financially building, investment. You said it earlier about the large corporations. Where do they need to invest? They need to invest in the people. Your Walmart people, 1, 2, and 3, or something like that, in the top 5 of the most wealthy in America, consistently. But they refuse to pay their people well, investing back in the economy. These large corporations, Boeing, we pay Boeing to be here. That's a deception. They're talking about what they're doing, about Boeing has come here and done all of this here. We pay them through tax breaks. And who has to compensate for the tax breaks? The taxpayers, which are these $7.25 people and everything. While we can't get roads fixed, schools invested in, or anything, because we're paying Boeing to stay here. So Boeing they ain't all they cracked up to be. But when we invest in the bottom area of economic area, financial area in our society, we begin to build it up. And I think that we need to focus more on that. And I believe ultimately that the national debt will be a situation where it does get better, because we'll get closer, everybody, toward that $61,000 and having at least working toward that now. Because right now, the little people, us,
3 of us.
yeah, I don't even have $1,600.
Get a dollar in my wallet.
Yeah.
Well, let me turn to another issue, and let's describe to me the following one word: national security.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You keep saying one word.
I don't want to make people bored at home.
Well, one word. I'm not sure. I just got to launch out there.
Okay, cool.
Of course, securing America is the job of everyone inside of our borders, to make sure that we have a safe society. But we cannot look at national security as a foreign entity. We can't look to the color of one's skin, their national origin, or the fact that they speak differently or practice a different religion, and decide that they're making our borders unsafe, or they're making America unsafe. The truth is that we have to look not only at our security from an international level, but we have to look first inside of our borders at where security lies at. We want
Exactly
to.
what I was thinking.
The,
Same
the,
thing.
and I'm gonna go back to it, the Republican Party like to focus on terrorism and all of these attacks, when the reality is every day we have terrorist attacks inside of our borders to the tune of 32,000 deaths per year, 92 per day based on gun violence that could be prevented through sensible gun legislation, common sense that will not take anybody's Second Amendment rights away or take their guns away. But those same people that's talking about our national security and terrorism and everything, they refuse to do what's necessary in order to make America safe inside of Americans for Americans, regardless of the nationalities or religious affiliations or whatever. When it comes to outside attacks and on our national security, radical Muslims, which is a very small percentage of the Islamic population, very small. Those are small in comparison to the day-to-day terrorism that's being experienced inside of our borders by homegrown terrorists. The thing is, what are we doing about that? Are we ensuring the safety of the people by putting a ban on military assault-style weapons with high-capacity magazines, or at least making the screening process adequate and the training necessary so that they only wind up in the right hands? Are we doing that up to the people? Are we doing that? No, we're not. We're just complaining about Muslims or Hispanics that, as Trump said, come to rape our women, which is a lie out of the pits of hell. There are a lot of good Hispanics that come into our borders. A lot that have been born here, lived here, and just are a great part of our economic security here. But the practices that can make America safer, for some reason or other, our Republicans like to deflect away from that. They pivot away from what we need to do to make this safe by going to overseas situations and people coming in, which is actually the minority issue. The real issue is right here. But you see, in order to make it safer here, they got to take some financial cuts from people like the NRA and the people that like to line their pockets, you see, in order to make sure. So that's when I hear, people talking about, or the Republicans talking about they're the moral majority of the religious right, and that they're pro-life. The reality is they don't do the things that are required to take the claim of being pro-life. If they were pro-life, they would make sure that sensible gun legislation, common sense gun legislation, that's not taking away anyone's Second Amendment rights, would be passed in these United States. That would, if it saved one American life, then it's done what it's supposed to do. But anytime that they won't, I'm going to call it pro-death.
I think 100 years from now, when they write the history of the decline of the United States, they'll point back to the day CNN went to 24 hours, and then Fox News came up sometime after that and went to 24 hours. And now we are just being inundated by basically meaningless news that just is there to sell advertising. So they've been looking for the most sensational news out there, and unfortunately, probably a half of Americans are glued to their TV sets, and they have been brainwashed. I mean, Fox News is the propaganda arm of the most extreme sections of the Republican Party, and they have created Donald Trump, and they have created all of the people that are following him, the angry, really ugly people that are following him. And that is what really frightens me. I mean, you want about terrorism. When Trump loses, what is going to happen to the third of Americans that were rabid Trump supporters, and they all have their guns? And what are we going to face? I mean, we're going to have domestic terrorism issues like we've never seen before. Where we went wrong was in allowing that basically hate-filled discussion, or not discussion, monologues, if you ever listen to Rush Limbaugh and things like that, that just rile people up, and then people listen to nothing else but that. We lost civility probably 2 decades ago, maybe 3 decades ago, and things just started to get really bad, where Republicans don't talk to Democrats, and liberals don't talk to conservatives, and things like that. What I found on my 1,000-mile bike ride is when you ask the right questions, and when you get down to what we all really want, we have much more in common than we have apart. But these news organizations, and now the political organizations, are trying as hard as they can to make sure that we're all separated and we're all arguing about different things. Even our presidential candidates now are just really poking fun at each other. I mean, they're not talking about the issues, they're talking about what divides us and why this other person is evil. I mean, that's what their argument for each other is. And that is going to become, I think, a big problem for us. I hope not, but I'm very concerned about what's going to happen in this next year after the election, or maybe immediately after the election. Things could get really ugly here in the United States. Terrorism overseas,
Yes.
This is it's a tiny problem, and frankly, our military is working on it really well.
Yeah.
I don't go 100% with what the military is doing. In a lot of places, they're instigating attacks, and they're instigating, and basically, like they say, all of these freedom fighters that are out there in the world that basically are our enemies, we think, see themselves as Han Solo and Luke Skywalker, and they see us, the United States, as the evil empire. And as I saw an interview with a woman who's a CIA operative for many years, and that was what she said. And she said, everyone thinks they're the good guy. And when you sit down, you talk to them, and you ask them what they're really working on, they all want the same things that we want. They want a healthy environment for their kids. They want to be able to raise children in a safe environment, and to give a better life to their kids than they had themselves. And for freedom, for liberties, choices to do what they want to do. And unfortunately, a lot of our foreign policies pit us against people that want to do that for one reason or another. And I mean, America has had a long history of colonialism and, just taking over countries and doing things for our own benefit, and with no concern at all for the little people in those countries. That really has to come to an end. I mean, if we're going to survive.
Describe to me the following one word: Guantanamo Bay.
Lovely.
Open.
I know that Senator Tim Scott is opposed to bringing those folks here to the United States prisons.
Mhm.
When you think of that, what you say?
Going back to it, we need to make our borders secure from inside. Why is the focus on Guantanamo Bay, and you can't even secure, you can't stop grandma from getting knocked in the head at Walmart? But let's look at the bigger picture. I don't see any problem at any point with any of those foreign combatants or whatever being housed in the United States. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
I don't see any problem with where they're at either, personally, unless it's just a financial issue about closing it down. Now, I think that the whole issue is that let's not create a paranoia about that unless we're going to be just as diligent in our paranoia and our pursuit of correcting that paranoia within our own boundaries. We incarcerate more people in the United States than any nation in the world by far. So who are we to talk about this handful of terrorists and how bad they are when we're creating a society bent on incarcerating people? It's a system that's set up where once again, the impoverished are, because of the lack of education, the substandard school systems, that there's a road to the prison system and a profit margin that's made for everyone that gets there. Now, Senator Scott, you talk about him in Guantanamo Bay. Senator Scott is a pro-choice guy. That's used as a choice guy for choice schools. he believes in charter schools, that people, the best education or the education that should be afforded everybody is that they can pay for, or they can drive their children in order to get to. But not everybody can do that. So because of that, you have a lot of children who fall through the educational cracks and wind up into what's called failing schools, the public school system, because the public school system is a failing system. I believe it's failing by design, in order to keep fueling this system we call the prison industry. You have to have people, especially in a for-profit prison system, you have to have people to work the system in order to keep the profits coming in. It's sort of like slavery. You have to bring in the people to work in order to generate the profits. The less money you give the people that are working, the bigger the profit margin. So if you start with the statistic that does say that lack of education does lead to incarceration, they call it now the school to prison pipeline, why not allow the public schools in impoverished areas to go down, so that the children that are coming through those school systems are headed straight to the prison industrial complex, free labor, and 21st century slavery, and the profit margins for the wealthy continue. Tim Scott, he can talk about Guantanamo Bay all he wants, but his school choice scenario is setting up the mass incarceration of the impoverished people in America. So he needs to redirect his thought process, and let's get back here and fix what's in our borders and make sure that our children have an opportunity through quality public education to avoid the prison system and to become viable, productive citizens of this great America.
Let me return to the presidential election because I want to talk to you about Donald Trump. Senator Tim Scott actually said this, I believe, to the state newspaper. He says this quote, "When you think about his comments, specifically Donald Trump, they're indefensible, disgusting, and oftentimes toxic. At the same time, I think Hillary Clinton's referral to African American young men as super predators is pretty toxic. I think calling millions of Americans deplorables and irredeemable is off the charts. So if you're looking for a rationale for remaining supportive of my party, that is, it's because the other party's nominee, in their words, are vicious and challenging." What's vicious and challenging in your mind?
Just that kind of talk. I mean, they're not talking about issues. They're not talking about anything that anybody cares about other than them, because they want to divide us and keep us all separate and fighting. Because that way we don't notice the elephant in the room, which is the capitalist system has trickled all our dollars up to the top, and now all of us are living out here paycheck to paycheck. And we have substandard conditions compared to the rest of the developed world for health care, for child care, for education, for Social Security, and for veterans benefits. And that's what they're trying to keep us all from looking at. And they're trying to say, just call each other names, let's do all this bad stuff. I mean, even going back to Guantanamo. It's 160 people. We have prisons filled with millions of people. You think we couldn't put a prison somewhere else with 160 people from Guantanamo to keep it safe? Okay, whatever. Whatever the reasons are, it's not an issue. It really is not an issue, and nobody I spoke to over the past summer, the hundreds of people I talked to, brought up Guantanamo as a big issue in their lives. What they brought up was health care and Social Security and education and veterans benefits. And so this is just more hand-waving. Look over here, this is the stuff you should be concerned about. Meanwhile, we got this big pile of America that's just doing really, really badly. And we don't want you to look at that. Look at this, look at this. I'm sick of that. I'm just sick of that.
See, what Scott did is basically he justified immorality, and it's even worse than bad behavior. Now, Secretary Clinton's comments, first off, are protected constitutionally by freedom of speech. She has a right to her opinion about anything, whether she misspoke or not. She still has a right to do that. And to call someone an undesirable name, it's not felonious. You don't go to prison for it. It's not a criminal charge. It's just maybe in bad taste. Now, talking about groping a woman's genitalia without her permission, that goes another step further. We got apples and oranges. Scott's trying to deflect away from this rotten apple who said he would, without permission, touch women. That's a rotten apple. Where the orange that she said is not even in the same category. So we're not falling for that smoke and mirrors anymore. And so he can take that, the commentary that he put out there, and just tell it to the Republicans or the Tea Partiers or the conservatives who might fall for the banana in the tailpipe. But we're not going to fall for that anymore. Secretary Clinton may have made a misstatement, but misstatements are not what sends you to prison. Mishandling a woman, which is deplorable, actually can sue you to prison because it's a felony. And Donald Trump should be prosecuted by his own statements because the evidence is standing right there. And now we have many women that have come forward and said so. So that's the whole thing about Scott or anybody else pointing the fingers at her and trying to compare what she said to what he's done, what's been alleged that he's done and that he admitted on tape that he's done. There's no comparison. So let's not even get bogged down by that, like Dimitri said.
Well, finish this sentence for me. November 8th, you will.
When?
Well, Dimitri, Cherny, and Thomas Dixon, this was very interesting. Thank you so much for this interview. I really appreciate this.
No, thank you, Quintin.
Thank you,
really
guys.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.